You don't understand death row until you're there. You don't know if you're gonna get the death row and people are gonna be trying to kill you, murder you, fight you. You can't put that into words.
You're gonna confess to setting this woman on fire, and you didn't do it? No way.
This is a tragic event surrounded by mystery and public deception.
So true crime documentaries have been captivating audiences for quite some time now. A lot of people are drawn to the true crime documentaries because we love learning about unsolved murders, wrongful convictions, and everything else along those lines. With so many podcasts and streaming services like Netflix, we can get our fair share of horrifying, compelling, and entertaining documentaries. But just be careful, because an interest in true crime documentaries can quickly turn into an obsession. Trust me. How's it going, YouTube? I'm your host for this one, Landon Dallas, and welcome back to another most amazing top 10 video. Make sure you guys stay tuned to the end of this video because I'm going to be replying to your guys' questions and comments from previous videos. Alright, let's get right into this one, starting off this top 10 chilling true crime documentaries you must watch. Starting us off, number 10, Making a Murderer. Okay, seriously, if you've never seen this documentary, I've talked about it in so many of these top 10 videos. I'm obsessed with it. Well, if you haven't watched it, it means you've been living under a rock, or two, you're Stephen Avery. All jokes aside, if you haven't binged the series yet, what the heck are you waiting for? Are you crazy?
We went through this 20 years ago, and we're going through it now again.
In this criminal justice system, good luck.
You are probably the most dangerous individual ever to set foot in this courtroom.
Making a Murderer examines the life of Stephen Avery, who spent a total of 18 years in prison for a crime that he didn't commit. But that's not the entire story. After he was released, he was given $400,000 for the wrongful conviction, but just days after he was a free man, he was accused of another murder and he was sentenced to spend life in prison. He was charged with the murder of Teresa Halbach, kidnapping, sexual assault, and mutilation of a corpse. His 16-year-old nephew, Brendan Dassey, well, he was 16 like years ago, he's much older now. He was also arrested for being associated with the murder, and he was convicted after he gave a false confession. He had no idea what he was saying. His IQ is very low. I feel so bad for him. Well, part 2 of the series have recently been released, and a high-profile lawyer is now on the case, and she has some pretty compelling evidence, so I know that you're gonna want to see what happens next. Into the Abyss climbs onto this list at number 9. Michael Perry and Jason Burkett, well, they went for a joyride one night in a red Camaro, and they ended up being charged with 3 murders back in 2001. But this documentary isn't about trying to get the state to reopen their cases. It's about looking into capital punishment and life on death row. Michael Perry was interviewed 8 days before he was scheduled to die, so we really get to see his vulnerability and weaknesses. We also see interviews of the survivors, witnesses, and police officers, which makes this documentary even more dark and pretty emotional.
So she let him in the house to use the telephone, and while he was doing that, Michael Perry stepped out of the laundry room, and that's when he shot her. This was the vehicle that Michael Perry and Jason Burkett was after. 3 people died for this car.
The confession tapes brings us to number 8.
They made me believe I killed someone I loved. They made me tell my mama I done it. And I didn't do it.
Innocent until proven guilty. Well, that's not always the case. This documentary will have you questioning our criminal justice system. The Confessions Tapes is a 7-episode series that focuses on innocent people confessing to crimes they didn't commit. And I know what you must be thinking. Well, how can someone actually confess to something if they didn't do it? Well, when you're being interrogated for hours and hours without a lawyer and given false promises, it's actually very common to confess. Strong alibis and lack of DNA evidence doesn't matter. Once the cops think you're guilty, they're trained in emotional deception in order to get you to confess to gruesome crimes that you've never even thought about committing. If you watch this series, trust me, you won't be disappointed. Now, in at number 7, we have The Keepers.
Bigger and deeper than we can imagine. The story is not the nuns killing. The story is the cover-up of the nun story.
We've all heard stories about priests using their authorities in order to take advantage of young children because they were protected by the church. And now this documentary sheds light on a cold case crime story that still needs to be solved. The story focuses on a 26-year-old nun who was a very popular teacher at a Catholic high school in Baltimore. She was murdered in 1969 and her body was found in the woods. And now, nearly 50 years later, people are starting to discover what really happened to Sister Kathy. This documentary shows us the horrifying truth about Catholic and government corruption that exists within churches, and we hear true stories about survivors telling us what really happened behind closed doors. I Am a Killer, well, I'm just saying a title of a Netflix TV show. Well, I Am a Killer is next up at number 6. This is a 10-episode documentary of scary interviews from convicted murderers. So if you've ever wanted to know what brings someone to murder, then this is a show for you. We've talked about wrongful convictions and unsolved murders, but this documentary is somewhat even more chilling. Each episode focuses on a man convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death row. None of them deny that they've committed brutal murders. Instead, this documentary shows us what really goes on in their minds.
If you ever thought about taking somebody's life, you better think about it long and hard. To walk that road right there is a lot of heartache. You may think you're tough, but really ain't nothing if you're a murderer.
Alright, number 5, evil genius. No, I'm not talking about myself. I'm a genius, just not the evil part. Okay, I'm a pretty big dum-dum. Well, this one's about one of the craziest bank robberies ever. Back in 2003 in Erie, Pennsylvania, a pizza delivery man walked into a PNC bank with a collar bomb around his neck, and he was carrying a gun that was disguised as a cane. And he handed the teller a note, and he grabbed a lollipop before strolling out of the bank. A few minutes later, the bomb exploded and he died. That's when things took a turn and got even more weird.
Told police that he was forced to rob the bank.
The FBI believe that whoever built the collar is patient and secretive.
Brian Wells said he was supposed to go on a scavenger hunt.
And he was supposed to go from point A to point B to point C, where the keys would be given him to release this bomb.
I watched this documentary, it's really good. Well, it was discovered that this pizza guy was being sent on an elaborate scavenger hunt in order to defuse the bomb around his neck. You're going to want to watch this true crime documentary because, trust me, things get really intense, and it's just like, some things are like, how did that even happen? And in this documentary, there was a man who hid a dead body in his freezer for years, and a mentally ill woman who had a lot of boyfriends who all died in mysterious circumstances. At the end of this documentary, you're wondering, like, is this woman the genius behind everything? The JINX takes us to number 4. Robert DEAREST was accused of murdering his wife, a close friend, and his former neighbor. Apparently the final episode of this series almost broke the internet. So I won't be giving away any spoilers, but here's what I have to say if you don't have any plans tonight. You should start watching this show.
Compelling evidence.
This case was not investigated the way it should have been.
A lot of smoke doesn't necessarily mean fire, but I think there's a lot of smoke here.
Not tell the whole truth. Nobody tells the whole truth.
This was such a groundbreaking series because before this documentary was released, Robert DEAREST refused to do any interviews with journalists. So this was actually the first time that he sat down for more than 20 hours over the course of several years in order to participate in this documentary. As it turns out, his cooperation might have been the biggest mistake of his life. And I'll just leave it as that. Mommy Dead and Dearest comes in to number 3. This insane documentary is about the lives of a mother and daughter, and their names is Dee Dee and Gypsy Rose Blanchard. The mother had an abusive mental illness called Munchausen. Basically, the mother convinced her daughter that she was severely ill, physically disabled, and unable to walk. This resulted in Gypsy undergoing several unnecessary invasive surgeries and taking a bunch of medications that she didn't even need. And this went on for nearly 20 years. It ended up when Gypsy killed her mother with the help of her boyfriend. Yeah, this documentary is very intense.
She had leukemia, and she was having seizures, and she had to be tube fed.
And then gradually that story fell apart.
Things are not always as they appear.
How do you kill your own mother?
In at number 2 is Paradise Lost Trilogy. 3 teenagers were accused of murdering 3 young boys, and they were notoriously known as the West Memphis 3. They were convicted because they liked Metallica's music, they read Stephen King's novel, and the police were able to coerce one of the boys into falsely confessing. The teenager who confessed had a low IQ, and he was very vulnerable when he was being interrogated for 12 hours. So as a result of all of that and some sketchy evidence, one of them was sentenced to death and the other ones got life in prison. But the story doesn't end there. Celebrities and musicians, well, they believed that they were innocent, so they held several fundraisers in the behalf that they were wrongly convicted. convicted. And in July of 2007, there was shocking new evidence that was brought into the case. I won't spoil anything, but you guys need to watch.
Everybody in the town and in the courtroom and on the jury are all blinded by their fantasies about satanic cults.
The criminal confessions are too many manipulated by the police.
I'm going to be wondering if the true killers were actually captured.
And this staircase tops this list at number 1. If I were to say like a TV show that's better than Making a Murderer or better than any of these shows on here, it's this one. It is so good. In 2001, Kathleen Peterson was found dead at the bottom of her staircase. Her husband found her body and quickly called 911. He told the operator that she had an accident and that she was still breathing. Shortly after, Michael Peterson was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. This documentary follows the trial, and it is full of twists, turns, and shocking moments.
Shift the foundations of my beliefs in the justice system.
The system is flawed and it needs to change.
This is contamination in the crime scene.
The DA is trying to say that our dad killed our mother.
There's no murder weapon, there's no motive.
But we're sitting behind our dad.
Well, I don't want to give any spoilers away to that show or to any of these, so hopefully I didn't do that. Well, you guys made it to the end of this video. It is time to reply to your guys' questions and comments from previous videos. Amanda Smith said, cool video, but you should make it a bit longer. I feel like I blinked my eyes and missed half the video. You're going too fast for me. No, it turned out to be perfect, interesting information, and this one too, really cool. Sometimes in videos they're so long, I try not to make it too long for you guys, so I have the bad habit of talking too fast, or videos that I'm just so interested in, I'm like, I'm just going like Mach 10, I'm just speaking so fast, but I'll try to slow it down for you guys and make these videos as long as possible. Stephanie Price says, what sparked your interest in revealing failures in the justice system? I've read a lot about like prisoners and done a lot of I've done a lot of these prison videos and watched documentaries, and it just seems like sometimes the justice system, it's not perfect. There's a lot of flaws in it, and it's so crazy to like the things you hear about and you see, like innocent people going to prison for like 50 years and then finally they get exonerated and then they're not even entitled to getting money. You have these people fighting them to like, no, you're not entitled to money. I find it so fascinating. I don't know. Tassie says, is it just me or is Landon's shirt always dirty? I made sure today's shirt was actually clean, but I'm gonna try to get producer Haley to make sure that I'm coming in every video for you guys with a clean shirt. But I snack a lot. I don't have time to eat meals, so I snack, and then I come up here and I film videos, but I apologize. How was I looking today? Good?